The predicted heat wave is now several days in, and it's bad all over the place, all over America. But the Pacific Northwest in particular has had it rough, and it's had it rough for a couple of different reasons. It's really an intersection of weather and climate, both of those things. And I know it's gonna be hard for the media, especially the right-wing media, to understand those two different things. We're gonna try to jump in a little bit. So first of all, it's a highly unusual weathered pattern that's currently in place over the Pacific Northwest. There's a record strong high pressure area known as a heat dome sitting over Washington State and British Columbia. This heat dome is yielding temperature departures from an average of between 25 to 50 degrees. So what that means is in any given spot, it might be 25 to 50 degrees hotter than it would otherwise be. And you can see that visualized in this heat map, which looks like the end of the world because it might be, not necessarily today, but this is what it's like now. You know, we're always like, oh my God, 2050 is gonna be rough. 2075, Jesus, 2100, what's it gonna be like? What's Wednesday gonna be like, honestly? So yeah, you can see, let's bring up the heat map again. Like I can see a little bit of 35 above what it's supposed to be, a little bit of 36 above what it's supposed to be. Now, what does that look like for major cities where tons of people live? Well, Seattle surpassed its record, which was set on Sunday, by 4 degrees when it hit 108 degrees on Monday. A different report said 111 degrees in Seattle. Portland hit its 3rd consecutive record day, an all-time high of 116 degrees. And the Canadian town of Lytton, I apologize, Canada, don't hate me, set a new national record for the 2nd straight day when it hit 118.2 degrees. And so simultaneously, I believe based on what I read, the highest land temperature recorded in Canada. And as an example, in, I think it's Seattle's airport, it was 110 degrees. Normally, the expected high there would be 73 degrees. I cannot stress how big of a difference there is between 73 degrees and 111 degrees. We're gonna show you the difference in terms of infrastructure because this is infrastructure week after all. But first, Charles, what do you think about this heat dome? It's really something.
I think conservatives have missed the boat, and let me explain why. This was the perfect opportunity to break out the Biden is sending America to hell in a handbasket. So this was the week that they were able to actually say, you see, the end is near, we're burning up because of Biden, and this is God's. I mean, they have no problem invoking God to promote everything from slavery to segregation to anti-gay marriage and everything else. Why stop now? Just like this was, that's what I think. I think it's hot as hell. And I think that people would probably, just even that, like you went for Make America Great. So why wouldn't they go for it's hot as hell, vote Republican? Like, I just don't understand how they missed the boat on this as a perfect slogan and marketing opportunity in order to sort of, show that America is literally going to hell in a handbasket, or at least it feels.
I think Newsmax said something about it's hot as Hades. So they're not willing to go to the biblical hell yet, but they're getting into mythology.
Well, Greek mythology, which is at least somewhere on the progressive chain.
Yeah.
All jokes.
It's like Mordor up in here.
Right.
Then maybe they'll do that.
All jokes aside, I think that for people who are just super resistant to science and fact, you can't ignore like what we're dealing with. And this is not just regular hot. It's not regular heat. I wanna say Seattle apparently had never had back-to-back 100+ degree days ever. And now they've had 3 in a row. You have to sort of look at climate and what that means. And I mean, granted, I get it. If you're a Republican from a state like Texas, Alabama, Florida, Mississippi, Louisiana, you're used to sort of this heat and you're like, what's the big deal? But properly contextualized, these places are not supposed to get this hot. And you can't just say, oh, it's the weather. We can't do anything about the weather because as you said, yes, it is the weather and that is part of it. But it's also climate. Like We are not supposed to get this hot. And the fact that we have progressively gotten going further and further and further in this space should prompt us to ask the question, all right, is there something we can do about this to potentially alleviate that? Or are we just going to, burn ourselves out quite literally with the way that we continue to live our lives? My prediction, John, is that it's not gonna get real for people until power grids start failing. I think.
Well, we've had a bit of it.
Yeah, I think the more and more power grids start failing and people don't have the ability to go to a cooling center or to remain in their house and remain cool, then people are gonna be like, wait a minute, what in the F is going on around here? Like that's gonna be.
Yeah, maybe, and we might be experiencing that. I mean, Texas is still gonna have a tough period. There's sections of California here, down in Southern California, that might have trouble with that coming up. It's also possible that it could happen up in the Pacific Northwest because, as thankfully a lot of people in the chat have been noting, including RC Tycoon. The thing about it being way hotter in areas where it's never that hot is the infrastructure is not set up for that heat, and that can come in many different forms. One of which is you don't tend to have AC in areas where you don't really need AC, and if you do, it's not going to be evenly distributed. Like working class, poor people are not going to have AC to the same degree as the wealthy. And so when a heat wave like this strikes something like Portland and Seattle, it doesn't strike everybody equally. And we're sort of joking around in the same way that I had to joke, month after month with the pandemic, because the alternative is just to cry on air, and we're not supposed to do that. It's in my contract. But this is very serious. People die from heat waves like everywhere. It happens all the time. It's only going to get worse and worse. People will die as a result of this, and it's going to hit poor people more.
Really quickly, John, to your point, I didn't know this, but heat-related illnesses are the number one the number one weather-related cause of death in America. I did not know. Like, that's interesting. Not hypothermia, not like it's heat cause or heat-related illnesses, heat stroke, and all kinds of other things. So when you tell and you say to viewers, people will die, you're not fear mongering, nor are you making this up. It's an actual thing, like it's a real thing.
It is. Bit of a fact check there. I think it was Jennifer Brown in the YouTube chat said that Hades is mythologically supposed to be quite cold. Tell it to Newsmax. They don't do their reading. That's the problem. Anyway, but in terms of infrastructure, it's not just that, like, for instance, they don't have places for people to cool down, and the power grid might not be set for AC to be used in the places that do. It's also this in Portland. The streetcar had to go down because their power cables melted, because they're not supposed to be in heat like that. Like generators and stuff like that. Everything is set up for a particular range of temperatures, including roads. So State Route 544 had to be closed because the asphalt roadway buckled and broke. And you can find this in multiple different areas of the Pacific Northwest. Photos are going around. Their streets are literally failing because of it. And God help you if you have to walk on some of these streets, by the way. And so this is a disaster. It's not 75 years in the future. It's happening right now. It is part weather, yes, but it's part climate. And by the way, those two things aren't independent either, because high pressure areas like this heat dome are not going to happen the same rate in a world that's 2 degrees Celsius cooler as it is right now. So that is also being affected by this. And thankfully, I think the media is doing a little bit better of a job. I've read that something like 27% of the major news networks coverage segments about the heat wave mention climate. That's way higher than we've had in the past. It is still a small minority of the total amount of coverage, so just bear that in mind.
Check out the Damage Report podcast each day, wherever you get your podcasts, whether Pocket Casts or Stitcher or iTunes. You can join me as I give you the news and stories you want, with a range of co-hosts and interview guests jumping in on the fun each day. Again, that's the Damage Report, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you get them at iTunes, don't forget to rate and review. Sometimes I'll read them live on the show.